Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Hopefully I don't start projecting too loudly because I'm so used to speaking with really loud voice I don't normally have the benefit of a microphone. But hopefully I don't blast all your eardrums away halfway through. So I will be discussing today the case for curbside waste education in early childhood and preschools. So Cleanaway has offered the No Waste program to preschools and early childhood centres since 2007, and I've been coordinating the program for the Sydney region since early last year, 2016. So today, during the presentation, I'll be discussing preschools and early childhood, why bother, identified need in the community, early years learning framework, program development, the program currently, the feedback from the centres and the preschools, and the known community impacts. So first off the bat, and in my opinion probably the most important, is why bother. A lot of people don't seem to understand that these young children actually have the capacity to take in the information that we're giving them. So it's something that I find I have a lot of problems with getting across just how important it is to provide sustainability education for, I say 0 to 5-year-olds, but the program's actually offered to 3 to 5s. That doesn't mean that we cut out the earlier groups. Sometimes the centres just like to have them sit in the back, and whatever exposure they have to the program I think is for the best. So there is quite a substantial amount of scientific literature and studies going into sustainability and environmental education for this age group. I'm not going to talk about all of them today. I'm going to talk about 2 that I found particularly interesting. This one here from Research Papers in Education by Joy Palmer and Jennifer Segate. This one's a really interesting one, so if you're interested in this topic and you have the time, I would recommend looking at this article. It's an international study that they did for young children all the way up to adults, looking at people's understanding of environmental impacts. And this particular document looks at the 4 to 10-year-olds, sorry. And basically what they did was they got a group of 50 children from a couple of different age groups. They had 4 years old, 6 years old and 8 years old, and they asked them questions about environmental impacts and gave them some information at the end as well. And then they went back every 2 years and they asked similar questions, obviously a little bit more complicated as they got older, and had a look at their answers. And what they found was the children that were originally 4 years old, when they got to 6 years old, their answers were much more, had improved a lot compared to the original 6-year-olds that had no previous exposure to these types of questions before. So it shows that this age group is capable of absorbing this information, and by giving them the information as early as possible, it's creating a positive effect. This document as well, from Neurons to Neighbourhoods, this is quite a large document. It's looking at the science behind early childhood development, and it's something that should be behind all early learning programs, obviously, so you have a good understanding. But basically, the way it relates to my presentation is that this document supports the fact that early exposure has a positive effect on social and environmental awareness, and that continues into older childhood, pre-adolescence, and further into their adult lives. So overall, most research agrees that the early childhood years are a period of the most significant development in a person's life and is regarded as the basis upon which the rest of their life is constructed. So it follows that inclusion of sustainability education in the early years develops positive citizenship and embeds positive behaviours in each individual who participates. And something that I've seen as an educator for these young children. Before I coordinated, I was the primary educator, so I would go out all day, every day. Sometimes I'd be doing up to 6 sessions with these children a day at different groups. And something that I would see is they would definitely be absorbing what I was giving to them and would be able to recall it when I visited the following year or a couple weeks later, a couple months. So it's something that I've definitely seen firsthand. I'm not going to talk about that one because I timed myself this morning and I ran out of time, so I'm going to leave that one. But I do love this photo here. This is a photo from a Binwise workshop that our education officer Emma did only a few weeks ago at Mossman in New South Wales. And they also got to have a truck visit at this workshop. The kids got to see a demonstration. They also got to get inside the cab and toot the horn and things like that. I love this little girl in particular is really excited. You can see it on her face. And kids just seem to have a natural affection towards the garbage trucks. So we're always really, it's really lovely going to these centres because we always get a really great welcome from the kids and the teachers. So moving on to the identified need in the community. I'm going to be talking about Sydney in particular because that's where I work around. So I've included a couple of snapshots of different areas around Sydney, Penrith, Blacktown, Cumberland and so on. This is the data from the 2011 and 2006 census for the age demographic across Sydney's suburbs. So the highlighted areas are the percentage of the population that fall between the age of 0 to 4 years old. And in Penrith, Blacktown and Cumberland, we've seen an increase from 2006 to 2011, 7.5 to 7.6 for Penrith, for example. We've had a slight drop in Mossman, Camden and the Hills Shire, but overall across Greater Sydney, there's been an increase in this age group with an additional 28,155 persons in 0 to 5 between these two dates. I couldn't include the most recent census from last year because the data hasn't been digested into this format yet. So this shows that the 0 to 4 age group is a significant part of our community, and as such they should be included in this sustainability waste education. This is another photo. This 4-year-old is from the Canterbury area in New South Wales. Again, he participated in a Binwise workshop and then got to have a truck visit afterwards. And this is him sitting in the cab. You can see his hands ready and waiting to toot that horn. It is their favourite thing to do. Okay, so next, the early years learning framework. What is it and how does the No Waste program support the framework? So this framework is an national document that's run by the government. It's a framework for early learning centres and preschools to follow to ensure that their students get a well-rounded education. So the early years learning framework describes the principles, practices and outcomes that support and enhance young children's learning from birth to 5 years of age, as well as their transition to school. So that's the description that the Australian government gives to this framework. This image is taken directly from the document, and it is there to help the teachers navigate through the different aspects of the framework. So they've got learning outcomes, principles and practices. And when developing the No Waste program, this was definitely taken into consideration, and the program fits right smack bang in the middle. So we've taken aspects from all three of those principles, those areas. So how does the No Waste program support the framework? Well, we fall right under outcome 2. Children are connected with and contribute to their world, and more specifically, children become socially responsible and show respect for the environment. So the document goes one step further and gives the educators examples of ways that they can achieve this, and we've definitely taken this into consideration with our workshop as well. So we use a lot of learning through play with this age group, and that's definitely a common thread throughout the framework document. So this is another image that I have here. I conducted this workshop and this truck visit, so it was lots of fun, and I've got fond memories of this one. These two little girls here stick out in my mind distinctly. They were two best friends, and they were very excited. You can see it in the photo. I'm glad that it came through. And this was from a centre in Doonside in New South Wales. So the program development, focus areas, outcomes, and key learnings and activities. So the focus areas for our program, we have 3 main focus areas. We've got kerbside waste, recycling, food waste, and littering. Our outcomes come directly from the national framework. So we've got children are connected with and contribute to their world, creates a partnership with families and community to reinforce learning, and learning through play. And lastly, our key learnings, these are consistent throughout each of our 3 different workshops. So we repeat them every time we go to a school. We've got truck safety, what goes into each curbside bin, less waste to landfill, and reducing harm to the environment. So this can be a bit tricky for us as educators because we visit for one lesson and then we would return a few months later to do the second lesson, and by that second lesson you have kids interrupting you, saying, we've already learnt this, I know this, or just blatantly giving you the answer before you have a chance to say it. So that's really amazing to see. And it's a lot worse by the third workshop. So this is, I've included a couple more photos. This is one of our workshops run by our educator, Rebecca. This one's a community workshop and it includes some of the parents. You can see them there in the background. I love these opportunities because you often get the parents interrupting during the workshop to ask you specific questions or coming up afterwards to get more detailed information, which is amazing. And it also provides the opportunity for the parents to be involved in this lesson. So when they go home, they can always reinforce the lesson by doing their own form of a sorting game in real life, which we just call recycling, but the kids like it a lot better when you call it a game. This is Christine. She's teaching a bunch of kids out at Canterbury Bankstown, and you can see here we've got a couple of hands up. We always ask the kids to ask as many questions as they want or answer as much as they can so they can get involved in the lesson. And finally, this is me doing a sorting game with the kids. Got my hand on the bin there because especially the little boys like to get up and have a look inside the bin, and you can see there's a bit of a height difference there between him and the bin, and sometimes they can end up almost falling in themselves. So it is really great, and some sort of shenanigans always seems to happen at this time of the lesson that gets myself and the educators laughing. So the program currently, I'll talk about our topics and any adaptions that we make. So we have 3 topics, as I mentioned earlier. We've got Binwise. This is looking at the curbside bin systems, Nature's Recyclers, which is worm farming and composting, and Litter Everywhere, which is surprisingly about litter. And next is adaptions to localized settings. So each council has its own waste processes, we all know that. And with early childhood especially, they need literalism in their learning. So showing them a cartoon of someone littering isn't going to have the same effect as showing them a photograph of someone littering. They are able to relate much better to the photograph. So all of our lessons directly relate to their environment, their bin system that they have at home, their bin system they have at school, and the waste that they would be familiar with. A lot of this age group have a younger sibling, so in the prop waste we always have a dirty nappy and other things that they might be familiar with. It's not real, but yeah, they get the idea, and there's always a big kerfuffle when one of the kids picks that one out of the box. So adaptions due to external initiatives, so we always take in what's happening around us as well. So Litter Everywhere was developed only last year, and that was due to the EPA litter grants, and this helps assist councils to achieve their outcomes. And some councils also offer a free worm farm or compost bin. More often than not, we're involved with that. We're the ones that go out and set it up with the kids. We integrate it into our workshops so that they have a hands-on experience with the unit instead of it just appearing one day in their school and they're not too sure what's going on. So that's always lots of fun. It also helps the centres to become a lot more sustainable. Once they've got that system going, they tend to get on board with other things as well. So at the beginning of each lesson, we hand out a teacher evaluation form. We ask them to fill it out and hand it back in at the end or fax it through later. And we've never got a bad response about this workshop. Overall, the educators and the directors of the centres are thrilled to have some help with meeting their sustainability outcomes. It can be really overwhelming when you don't come from this sort of a background, sifting through all the information. So having someone coming out and telling them definitively this is what needs to go in each bin, this is what your council does, is definitely a really big help. And these are just a couple of the comments that we've gotten so far. I have thousands of these in my office at home taking up space, but so all the children were very engaged in the experience and enjoyed all the activities, great age appropriate and easy to use resources. The children were interested and loved the term litter bug we'll use to encourage children not to litter. So it's great to hear that our lessons will be reinforced later. and more often than not, we receive a small gift when we go to the centres. I've included a couple of my favourites that I've received personally. So this one I got from a little boy named Daniel. He had a truck visit, and he wrote me a card saying thank you for coming to visit, and you can see he's drawn a garbage truck there. I think he's done a really great job of it. I visited a centre in Castle Hill. On the left is the letter that they sent me saying thank you, and it had a couple photos which I loved. And on the right, another centre from Castle Hill gave me a booklet, and it had a drawing from every child that participated in the program. At that centre, that was about 80 children. So it was a big booklet. It was huge. And but I had time after that lesson. Sometimes it's a bit hard, you've got to get between schools, but I had some time. So I stayed around and I got to flick through every photo, and I got to personally thank each child. I got them to come up and describe what they'd drawn. But my personal favourite was this one. It includes the 3-bin system. Might take a bit of interpreting, but it's there. So the yellow, the red and the green, which I really love to see. Zayden's done a great job of drawing a garbage truck. I especially like the truck driver. I think it's pretty accurate. And last of all, this is a video that was sent to us by a parent. This little girl participated in the program, and they're just asking her about what can go into each bin. There's hot chips involved, so she's a little bit distracted, which I'm sure you can understand, but if you listen closely, she is giving the right answers.
What did she say goes in the yellow bin?
Boxes and potatoes.
Very good. And what goes in the red bin? Stinky stuff.
So I'm not sure if you could hear around the chips, but what goes in the recycling bin, boxes and bottles. What goes in the red bin, stinky stuff. So we do use that term quite a bit to help them associate the red bin with stinky things, normally food and nappies and smelly socks. We tell them go into this bin. We give them a bit more information than that, but that helps them to associate that bin with the stinkier things in life. And lastly is our known community impacts. So at the end of each lesson, every child is provided with a parent letter or a guardian letter to take home. This outlines what they learned during the day, and it also gives them council-specific information about their bin system at home. So last financial year, 2015 to 16, we taught 9,841 3 to 5-year-olds across Sydney. And the potential reach for that based on a 2.7 people per household statistic is over 26,000. So looking at it that way, we do seem to have quite a large reach, and the children are definitely vocal, as we heard in the previous workshop, about what they've learnt at school and making their rules known in the household, so it does work out quite well. So this is my final photo for the talk. This is our education officer, Emma. She's giving a talk about bins. No, actually, this one's about the worm farming. And you can see every eye is glued onto the poster that she's showing of the garbage truck, except for this little boy here. He's a little bit too preoccupied with the toys. But I was there for that lesson, and he just had enough that day. But everybody else seems to be right into it. So I'm going to leave you with that great photo, and I'm not sure, do we ask questions during this time? Yeah, out of time. Okay, I'll save that for the end when we do the discussion. Okay, thank you guys.